Welcome to another episode of Healing is Gangsta. I'm your host. I am Tajay. You can catch me at Tajay310 on Instagram and all social media. I am a registered marriage and family therapist. I'm a doctoral candidate specializing in clinical psychology and trauma, and we welcome you as always. And to my right, I got a very powerful guest, as usual, but this one is particularly special to me because I've known you for a long time. So I've got to witness a lot of this stuff that we're about to talk about. You know what I mean? And I'm really glad to have you here. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Let them know who you are.
I go by the name of Quincey White. That's my government name. I'm out of Los Angeles, California, off 127th and Broadway.
No doubt. Tell them what it is. That's Athens Park. Tell them.
Yes, sir, Athens Park.
Yeah, man. Shouts out to them. You feel me? Now, again, man, it's hard for me to even, where to start with you. You know what I'm saying? But let's start at the beginning. Athens Park. What does that mean to you? Where is that where it started at?
Well, it's crazy because my grandma had the house since from what I remember, the 50s.
Wow.
But us, my family, my dad and my mom, we moved around a lot. But we always had that house to go to, our whole life, you know what I mean? But we lived in vans, we lived in motels, we had it really rough, growing up, you know what I mean? My whole time going to middle school, I lived in the van. Yeah, it's rough.
See, now now that's what I'm talking about, because I think most people that see you or know of you, they know how deep you can get, obviously, because you're very, your lyrical prowess is up there, you know what I'm saying? Right. You know, up there with some of the greats that you've done music with.
I appreciate you,
Nah,
bro.
no doubt. For anybody who wants to see who this man is, you can go on YouTube, check out Nipsey's Crenshaw tape.
Yeah, that's when I used to go by DUBB.
Yeah, DUBB, you know what I'm saying? That's who I knew back in the day. You feel me? But, and you could find all that on YouTube. Cyphers with Kendrick Lamar and the projects.
Yeah.
All that. You feel what I'm saying? And even at that time, I know your story was right in the middle. But let's start, like I said, let's start with your family. You know, talk about some of that upbringing. I know you said that you guys went through some hard times and, kind of semi-homeless. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so we pretty much just bounced around a lot. The only time we really had a spot is my auntie owned some apartment buildings. No, I think she owned a house. And we rented it from her, and then my dad couldn't pay the rent, so we got kicked out of that. And then we ended up living in our van, and we had to use the bathroom, you know how the little training potty for kids.
Oh yeah.
We would put a plastic bag in there when we had to take a shit. You know what I mean? And then tie the bag up and throw it in the trash.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if we had to piss in it, we'll just pull over on the side and just pour the piss out. It was crazy. And then we graduated from that to then my whole middle school, we was in a motel. You know what I'm saying? From the van.
Now at that age, going through that.
Yeah.
Right? Because maybe at that age, when you're that young, you don't know how traumatizing that is, because you can kind of seem normal if you don't know nothing else, you know. But now when you think about that in hindsight, how do you think that was impacting you? When you put yourself in that kid's eyes, how was that impacting you?
It was crazy because so one of my homies, his name was Otis. He was one of my closest friends in middle school. He used to after school, he would try to walk me home. The motel we used to stay at was on Imperial, right past Crenshaw. It was called Palm Inn.
Oh, I remember that.
I never forget it. It had a drive-through deli in the front. So he would always try to walk me home, and I'm like, nah, it's cool. Just go ahead and go home. I'm gonna just walk myself, you know.
Yeah.
But because I didn't want him to see that I lived in a motel. But what happened was over the weekend. So our refrigerator was an ice chest. We had to put ice in it, so we had lunch meat and shit, and my mama had a hot plate. So we you know how the ice chests were the sodas and the waters and shit. You know what I mean? At a party.
Yeah.
So that was our refrigerator, bro. So but it had an ice machine outside the motel.
Right.
So on the weekend, you know, like once the ice turned to water, you know, it was our job, like as the siblings, to go to the ice chest and refill it.
Yeah.
Pour the
Right.
water out and,
Right.
you know, and refill it with ice. So it was my turn. So I guess when I did it, somebody from school was driving down Imperial and seen me at the motel. And they didn't think like, oh, I was just staying there for the weekend. They was like, oh, he lived there.
Right.
So when I come to school on Monday, the nigga blurred me out like, oh, you stay in the motel, like in front of everybody. And I just felt like terrible, you know what I mean? Because I knew it was true,
Right.
but I didn't want to pay it too much attention because, like you said, how traumatizing that was. I found out how traumatizing that was when I went to school, and he said that.
Yeah, it seems like you were feeling a lot of like shame, like
I was hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like my reaction wasn't to like beat him up. I was more so like, damn, like it's out. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know, but I didn't like really feed into it because I didn't want people to think it was true.
were you ever angry about your situation? Like, you know, as far as like, cause I personally, I've been in those types of situations. You know what I'm saying? Most of us have. You know what I'm saying? That come from that community. And I would sometimes inadvertently even be upset. Like sometimes with my moms or like, you know, things like that. Did you go through anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, because my mom like never worked, right?
Yeah.
Because my dad met her when she was 18 years old. My dad was 10 years older than my mom. When he met her, he met her at a diner. She used to work at a diner, and he told her, you know, quit your job. I'm gonna take care of you. You know, so you know the little, you know, the
Yeah.
regular story, like, you know, back in the day.
Right.
Or like the man worked, the lady stay home and you know take care of the kids. So she never worked, man.
So
And,
you always had both parents.
and I always had both parents. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
And that's crazy that they stayed together to do all that.
They stayed together until I was till I was probably about in 9th or 10th grade.
Wow.
Then my mama left.
Okay.
My mom left. And then my dad, like we pretty much stayed with my dad.
Yeah.
You know, my mom didn't go far. She went down the street. Like, it was crazy because she met a dude. He was literally down the street, bro. Like, we stayed on 127th and Broadway. She was on 127th in Maine.
Okay.
So that, like, the story is just ridiculous. It's crazy. You know what I mean? But,
that is.
like, my mama is still, like, to this day, like, one of my best friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, I literally call my mom every day.
Yeah.
All day, like
and a lot of our
3 times
parents,
a
a
day.
lot of our parents are dealing with the trauma, their trauma from growing up.
Exactly.
You know, and that's something that we don't realize as children. Sometimes it's easy for us to judge or get upset. You know, when you don't realize till you get older and you're kind of dealing with some of them situations yourself. You know, another thing that I see a lot with kids that I help now. You know, and again, having been through that situation myself, a lot of things that I see is, when you're in an unstable environment, you know, like having to move and be in the streets and all that at a very young age, a lot of times they have an unstable view of the world around them, and it carries into their life as they get older.
Right.
Did you feel coming up any of that unstableness, like not trusting certain things, or just like, you know, just kind of feeling like you didn't have a foundation, like a strong foundation?
Yeah, nah, for sure. We didn't have a foundation, so like I was like even wary about like getting close to people because it's like I might switch schools soon.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but I always, you know, people always gravitated to me because of how genuine I was. I've always been like this since a kid. You know what I mean? But obviously, you know, kids are way more judgmental than, you know, adults. So I didn't tell people like my personal business, like, you know, like right now I tell somebody I live in a motel.
Right.
Because I don't give a fuck what you think about me.
Right.
You know what I mean? But as a kid, you hold on to that and you want to protect that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I didn't tell nobody that, you know, even though that I lived in my truth, but I knew I lived in the motel, and, you know, I wouldn't tell nobody I got a big house, and I wouldn't front, but I just didn't, like, I ignored it, and I didn't really tell nobody about it. You know?
I mean, and again, you're dealing with, too, like not feeling safe. That affects a kid when they're young, you know what I'm saying? Because kids, this is the thing, when we're young, you know, we think we don't want rules, but actually what's good for kids and what kids really want is structure. They want some kind of security, consistency, and structure. You know what I mean? Even though consciously they might say they don't want that. But
Yeah.
They do, because, and what happens when there's an absence of that structure, a lot of times, is that they'll act out.
Nah, seriously.
You know, like, and sometimes the schools are misinterpreted as bad behavior. Oh, that kid just bad.
Yeah.
It's like, nah, he's going through something in the house, or whether he's not getting attention or he don't feel safe. This is his way of expressing that.
Yeah.
Did you go through any things like that, like in school or any?
Oh no,
stuff
for
like
sure.
that?
So like I told you, I'm from 127th and Broadway. So my school district was like 122nd Street School,
Okay.
Gompers,
Yeah.
Locke.
Right.
But those was Crip schools.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm
about to
saying?
say,
So
yeah.
I went to 122nd Street School, and I got expelled. You know what I mean? And then my mom was like, "All right, you going to Inglewood. You know, you going to Inglewood School." So from 122nd Street School, I ended up going to Woodworth Elementary.
Okay.
And then from Woodworth, I went to Monroe Middle School. And then from Monroe, instead of going to Morningside, because Morningside is like the home school of Monroe, like for high school.
Yeah.
So instead of going to Morningside, I went to Inglewood.
Okay.
So I think I used somebody's address or something. I
Yeah,
don't remember,
yeah.
but you know.
Yeah, you went way to the west side.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of people that went to high school with me, you know, if they wasn't close to me, they thought I was from Inglewood. But you know, once my grandma was she was like transitioning. You know, she was getting sick. So once she was getting sick, she gave the house on 127th and Broadway to my pops, and then that's when we start staying there. You know what I mean? But yeah, man.
It's crazy.
But now that I look back in retrospect, like I feel like if I would have went to all LA schools, I'd probably be dead. Because I'll be more deeper into the gang banging because I would have went to Centennial and where all the homies was.
Right. I was gonna say.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But so I think that distance gave me that, you know, that intellect and from an early age I always like my house was called the White House, not because it was white, because it wasn't white, but it was our last name.
Right, your last name was White. Right.
But all the OGs stood in front of our house drinking and talking and shit. So instead of hanging with people my age, I was always listening to the OGs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's why I got so much respect in my hood, because I'm one of the most rowdiest niggas or one of the most niggas that got the most money or something like that. It's just because I've always had that level of respect from the OGs, and I always show respect, you know what I mean?
And they probably saw something in you, you know, that they may not see in themselves.
Yeah, for
You know
sure.
what I mean? A lot of us may not see potential in us, but some of the, in ourselves, but some of the OGs will recognize potential in somebody else, you know, and
Right.
they want to, in the best way they know how,
Yeah.
or try to foster that potential.
Yeah, for
You know what I'm
sure.
saying? Was your family, because I know living conditions were unstable.
Right.
How was the family structure? Were you guys tight in those situations, or how was it in the home? Was, as
Well,
far
for the
as,
most
like,
part, I feel like me and my siblings was real close.
yeah.
You know what I mean? A lot of the times, my mom and dad would probably argue a lot, but I think it was like, cause my dad, like, he had a job or whatever, but he was bad with money. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was a great dude, man, and he was a hard worker, but his vice was going to the racetrack.
Gambling.
So he'll get his check literally and go straight to Hollywood Casino.
Yeah.
He was big on them horses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he would probably like gamble away his money, and then when the bills was due, he had to borrow money. Like, you know? So it's like we was always behind. So like with a woman always want that security, especially if you tell a woman, quit your job, I'm gonna take care of you.
Right.
You know, so back to you saying, like, you know, the trauma that, you know, my mom's dealt with, that's why I'm able to, you know, forgive my moms for anything she ever did, because it's like, now that I'm an adult, I see how important mental health is.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know what she went through.
Right.
She haven't told me everything she went
She
through.
might not be fully aware of how she's being affected by whatever she's
Exactly.
being through.
So, you know, for the most part, our family was cool, but, you know, like Christmas and all that stuff, we wasn't able to get the things that our neighbors was getting. Like, they'll get Razor scooters, and we'll get the off-brand scooters from the swap meet, from the Avalon swap meet. And then the Barons will fall out the damn scooter like the second day we'll get them. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I didn't realize my dad was doing all he could. You know what I mean? Yeah, he probably could have got us a Razor if he was better with money.
Yeah.
But he wasn't. So he was, he had to get the off-brand scooter from,
Right. But I mean, it seems like you had some good, despite some of the poverty.
Yeah.
And some of the things. It seems like you guys had a good support system. Like as far as like being there for each other, and you know, do you feel like you were secure in that aspect of your family life?
Yeah, for sure. Like, because like when I was growing up, like we was all close. Like the siblings was close. Our aunties and uncles and cousins always came around. We had like Sunday functions and shit like that. And I would be at my auntie house, my auntie Geraldine house, with my cousin Andre. And shit, it was always close until we got older, and then we start, you know. I think when you get older, you start trying to figure out your own life, and that's when the distance.
Going their way.
Yeah, but it's not like intentional.
Right,
it's like people kind of isolate and try to figure out their own life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the reason why I highlight that, first of all, I love hearing about good black family structure, even despite the poverty and, you know, all the things that we go through, you know, in the black community. You know, it's something to speak about. You know that. You know, when you hear stories about good family structure, because I say it all the time on these shows about the stereotypes of black families, you know what I mean? So I love to hear that, because those little things where people look at it and say, that doesn't matter, it does matter, because that in itself, that support system could have saved your life.
Nah,
you know what I mean?
real,
because you had a good relationship with your parents, you know, despite,
for sure.
You know, so that probably had a lot to do as far as what separated you mentally,
right?
And kind of like where you were grounded at amongst all of that craziness,
right? And then, you know, even though I had both of my parents, I feel like I had to learn a lot of things on my own.
Yeah,
because, you know, I feel like we all recovering from like generational trauma.
Absolutely.
So it's like I didn't get taught about sex. I didn't get taught about, you know, financial literacy. I didn't get taught about credit.
Nobody taught them.
Exactly. But I blame them, like, man, you know, I just had to learn about credit in my late 20s.
Yeah.
But they don't have good credit. They never cared to have good credit because nobody ever taught them. And they never had the, you know, they never developed the will to do it on their own. But I said, okay, yeah, like I'm 26, I don't have good credit. Let me get my credit up. So now I got an 800.
Yeah, nah,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
congratulations.
but I made the choice to break that. You know what I mean?
And that's a good example, you know, because that's what we all have to do.
Right.
At some point, we got to take it upon ourselves to break those chains. Otherwise, it just continues. You know what I mean?
Nah, for sure.
And then your kids are looking at you like, yo, why you didn't teach me that?
Right. And then what's so crazy is I'm a father now. My daughter is 7. So that drove me because I have a daughter, right? Yeah. I come from the streets, and then my daughter, you know, calmed me down. But what also gave me the extra fuel, because my daughter is slightly autistic. She has mild autism.
Okay.
You know, she's high functioning, but, you know, like her I wouldn't say downfall, but her thing is like she can't really like have a ping pong like how me and you going back and forth. Yeah. She can't really speak like that, but she's able to say, "Can I have pizza?" Or, you know, she'll say.
My brother deals with the same thing.
Right. So it's like at first I used to look at all the negative, like, man, why I gotta be her? Why me? Like, you know. But I'm like, man, everything happens for a reason, and then that literally gives me all the fuel that I need to, like, you know, keep going. And man, I'm like in love with my daughter. Like, I don't look at her different. Yeah. She's very smart. She draws like all type of crazy shit, and like, you know what I mean.
What people don't know about like people that are autistic,
way smart.
Yo, there's certain things that they do that are like out of this world that I can't do.
Yeah, nah, seriously.
You know what I mean?
Seriously.
Like, you know, and they're geniuses.
No, seriously, bro.
In some degrees, they're geniuses. It's just like anybody who, you know, just like we all have things about us that we're weak on. You know what I mean? And that's how I look at that. It's not a handicap. It's nothing. Actually, they're probably better at a lot of shit.
No, seriously. Like, she's like, you know? I feel like with autism, I feel like they brain is overworking, and that's why they're not able to be present and like really like sit down and like focus on like the small things, like having a back and forth conversation, because their brains is just steady, just, you know, overworking. No, seriously. So I have to calm her down. Like, hey, calm down, talk to me, look at me. You know, so I make her make eye contact with me, and then I make her say her sentence. So anytime she wants something, she might just try to point, you know what I mean? But I'm like, no, what do you want? You know what I mean? And then I want ice cream, please. And I'm like, all right, let's go get one.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, which one you want? And then I'll make her say which one she want. You know what I mean?
That's beautiful.
Yeah, bro.
Man,
And I'm
shouts
with
out
my
to her,
daughter
man.
like
That's real.
4 days a week. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm really with her a lot, man. And
That's beautiful.
Yeah, bro.
You know, especially for anybody out there that's either going through that or dealing with a family member that's dealing with that. I think that's some inspirational stuff right there.
So
bro.
to be honest, bro, I used to look at all the negative in my life. You know what I mean? Anything bad that happened to me, I used to look at my daughter like, man, why she got to be autistic? But now it's like, man, like I was telling your homie behind, the camera before we got on, like, man, there's beauty in all this struggle shit, man, because it makes you appreciate everything. You know what I mean? Because like literally I can be dead, bro.
Yeah, no,
all
absolutely.
my homies is dead. Like everybody that I came in the rap game with, they dead, bro.
Yeah, I know a lot of them.
No, seriously.
We in pictures. I mean,
Nah,
I remember
like,
we were on the phone talking about that, because we have a lot of mutual homies.
Yeah.
And, I think back to certain pictures, and it's just like, it's like one or two of us left.
No, seriously, bro. And I used to think that I wasn't going to see this age that I'm at.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
that's a common thing, too, in our communities, is that, like, I can so relate to that. I mean,
yeah.
And the tragic thing about that is, when we all think like that as a people, right? You know how they say what you say is strong.
Yeah.
Like you can manipulate the universe with the things that you say.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like we got a whole just generations of people who expected to die young. Not only expected to die young, but accepted it.
Yeah.
So when you unconsciously accept that fact,
Right.
like, you know what, I'm gonna die young, you start racing to it.
No, seriously.
You know what I'm saying? And that's what's scary about like our community.
Yeah.
Is that a lot of us are racing to that.
Yeah, and then you get like comfortable in like dangerous situations. Like you ain't supposed to be on this corner, but you're like, nigga, it is what it is. Like,
Right.
Bro, my homie will tell you I move so militant, bro. Like so militant. Like people be like, man, why you always so serious all the time? Because nigga, like, it's not that I'm trying to like, cause I know I don't have 100% control over when I go, but it's like, if I have control over my moves, I'm going to be aware of that and conscious of that. I'm not going to be pulling up somewhere and hanging out in the car. Like, no, if I'm pulling up somewhere, I'm going to look around before I get out. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to check my surroundings, and then when I go to the door, I'm going to make sure the person is already there unlocking the door. I'm not about to be sitting at the door because, you know what I mean? I don't know who following or nothing. And then when I'm driving, I'm looking at my rear views and shit. Like, I know I don't got no enemies like that, but
you don't need enemies.
You don't need it.
You know
You
what
feel
I'm
me?
saying?
Because somebody can just see you doing your thing and see the affiliation of where you from and be like, man, fuck that nigga.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. And it was crazy because we live life like that.
Right.
And what you're talking about is being hypervigilant.
Yeah.
Now, we were talking off camera about some of this hypervigilance.
Right.
Which is like a form of PTSD.
Seriously,
You know
bro.
what I'm saying? Like when you can't sit with your back to the door, or you can't sit in your car, or, we're looking around, always ready for things to pop.
Right.
And it seems like I say this to every guest, but it's like this is something that we all deal with. It affects us physically. We were just talking about high blood pressure.
Nah, seriously.
Stress hormones that clog your arteries.
Nah, seriously.
Your brain doesn't function correctly. Can't learn right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Your brain get foggy.
From a little kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's like we have to find ways as black folks, and this is something I'm working on professionally.
Yeah.
And researching about, because this is the thing. When you live outside of these communities, our lives are very abnormal. When you deal with outside of our community, they're just like, what? You've seen how many people die, or how many of your friends have died?
It's not regular.
It's not regular. So when you look at psychology from like their point of view, they just want to reach this ultimate like Zen mode.
Yeah.
Of just being in Zen mode all the time, right? For us, that's not a reality for us.
It's not
because
realistic.
We can't function being unprepared. It is a fact that you could walk to the liquor store and get smoked. Step outside, get smoked. Go to the swap meet, go to the park,
right?
Go to a football game, go anywhere, go to school.
Nah, seriously.
You know what I'm saying? And so
Or even be at work.
Right. So it's like I'm trying to find a way for us to be aware of those situations, but also balance it to where it's not affecting us physically.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And also be able to, when we are in safe places, because a lot of times we have trouble adjusting when we're in safe places. Yeah. We're still ready to turn up. We're still like, what's up? And we're not able to recognize when we're not in those situations.
Right.
So I'm glad you brought that up. You know what I mean? Because there's probably a big part of your life
for real,
that's been affected by just that.
No, seriously.
You know what I'm saying? When you think about it, and we'll talk about that in a second, but I wanted to kind of continue with your story. So kind of coming up in the middle school, where it seemed maybe you guys stabilized a little bit with the home situation, right? As far as being in a house, actual house. I ask every guest, especially ones that may be gang affiliated, whether it's in the past or currently, right? Thinking back to, your family structure and the things that you went through and growing up around your neighborhood, is there anything in particular when you think about now that made you go to the hood? Not just living in the hood, but being from the hood. What do you think, what factors do you think made you make that decision? Because clearly, you're smart. You know what I mean? You knew that at a young age, we know the dangers. Even if we don't fully admit it to ourselves, we know the dangers that come with this life. That you can get killed or go to jail. So what made you take on that life or take on that affiliation when you look back on it?
Well, I was playing basketball my whole life. So like living over there, obviously, my uncle is like one of the dudes that started Athens Park. Yeah. Ironhead. So, which is my dad's brother. So, from a young age, like homies would always tell me, "Oh, you from the hood? You from the hood?" Yeah. And I'd be like, "Nah, I'm not." You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Nah, no, I'm not. I live over here, but I'm not. Right. You know what I mean? And then, but when you get like, shot at and just from being over there and
you're dealing with the same
you're dealing with the same shit being
that all the homies from the hood.
No, seriously, because you live over there. Yeah. And I'm on and you gotta understand that I'm on one of the main blocks. Right. You know what I mean? So like I had to like fall in line, you know what I'm saying? So like I didn't want to, but I was like, I might as well, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, cause if they come through, they're not gonna say, "Hey, bro, are you a gang member?" before they pull out their gun. Right. Yeah, they gonna see me.
They just shooting. Period.
Yeah.